Hi, community. How are you? The reason why I am dropping in live today is because it's the start of the month, and every time I come in at the start of the month, it's to have a chat about what we in the My Incredible Orbit community are going to be focusing on as our agenda for our 3 sessions that we do together as a group. And then we get together at the end of the month and kind of have a bit of a discussion, a debrief, a chin wag about any concepts that came up for our members that they want to chat about, talk about any interesting areas that they noticed shifted and released either within them and their health or, in their life, which very, very, very often happens. Last month, we did 3 really, really cool sessions around this concept of declarations, and they even surprised me. This month, I kind of maybe have a feeling that a lot of the concepts that we addressed and discussed in last month might kind of connect to what we're doing in this month, and that is looking at the concept of love, right? So what I want to do first is remind us that anytime we come into space for the purpose of facilitating a body talk session, which is obviously what I do and have been doing for years, it doesn't matter whether it's in one-on-one sessions or if it's in our group sessions that we do, such as in the My Incredible Orbit community. One of the most fundamental things that an individual's innate wisdom is always trying to achieve is the return into this space of love. Now, there is a lot of really corrupt kind of BS belief systems around love. Everyone has them. We are all brought up with them, right? So a lot of people not only have a real, I would say, corrupt understanding on what the consciousness of love really is, what it looks like, how you would experience it, how you would express it, how we're meant to experience that as a collective global community. But not only that, and that's bad enough, that we don't even have the right, understanding around what love consciousness really is. But nearly every single one of us were conditioned at birth. There's some information that comes through at birth that's already there. There's a lot of information already written, so to speak. It's like you come in with half-written books, multiple half-written books, and all this information that comes through the genetics and the ancestral lines, and even from past life situations, will have information already imprinted within you around what love is and their version of what love is. So every time a person experiences something and they perceive this story to be around love, the experience to be around love, they'll build belief systems around that. They'll build attachments, triggers, behaviors, strong patterns. A lot of them are very, very unconscious, subconsciously driven patterns around love. And it joins collectively in that genetic line and gets passed on with each new person that comes into their human experience. So when I was born, I was already born imprinted with information from my mum and my dad and from their genetic lines on what love is. And for a lot of people, there are belief systems such as love is painful, and love is hard, love is unachievable, love is toxic, love is deceitful, there's all these beliefs. And I can guarantee you that you could sit there and we could have a conversation. I could say to you, right, tell me what you think you know love to be true for you. What does it mean to you? How do you think about it? What are your beliefs about it? And we could sit there and we could write and write and write and write for hours around this topic. But that's just what sits, that's available to you in that conscious part of your mind. If we were to be able to bypass your conscious part of the mind and jump into all the other aspects of your consciousness and other levels of your mind, such as the subconscious or even the sub of the subconscious mind, holy cow, is that a minefield? That is a minefield of all of these other big core belief systems that drive your smaller belief systems, the one that you kind of consciously have an awareness about. So these big core belief systems, they really drive the way that you do love, the way that you interact with it, what you believe about it, what you attract through it. It affects your relationships. It profoundly affects your relationship with yourself, which is the most important one, not to mention the relationships that you have with other people, with animals, with nature, with the world around you. So every single time we do work together, we're always, to some capacity, working on what love means to you. And little bit by little bit, we're restoring aspects of ourself, repairing parts of the stories that are written there, so that we can truly experience the consciousness of love as it is intended to be experienced. And the ripple effect that that has into our relationships, the way that we treat ourselves, the way that you hear internal dialogue, the toxicity that comes through in thoughts and the harshness and the shame and everything like that, there's no space for that there. There's just no space for it there. And that really affects your relationships that you have with family, with partners, friends. Really, really affects it majorly. So, gosh, this is a big topic. And we've only got 3 sessions to really kind of open up the floor here and say to each one of our innate wisdoms, what is the most important thing that we can address right now in this? So I'm super interested to see where we actually go. This could be so interesting. There are some very key aspects of the body-mind complex which have a very strong relationship to the consciousness of love or concepts of love. And before I actually jump into that, I just want to do a little bit of a backtrack for 1 second. I know I said when we come into our human experience, to some degree, there's certain information that's there already available, it's already imprinted, which gives us some type of foundations around beliefs and attitudes and behaviors towards love. But it's nowhere near to the degree that we would have when we are 8 years old, 14 years old, 34 years old, 52 years old, right? So as when we get born, that is probably the closest that we will come to the natural consciousness of love, meaning our truest expression of love is when we were born. That is when we experience love to the absolute purest degree that we possibly can. And then what happens as we start integrating the world through our 5 senses and experiencing the world around us, and this happens immediately at birth, right, is that you start to develop stronger information and stronger relationships with what love means. For instance, sometimes at birth, there is pain at birth. And that can come in the form of procedures that have to be done, injections that are given, so forth like that. love is associated, like the entire body-mind complex experiences a consciousness of love. When you're first born and then continue life after that, one of the biggest senses of the five senses that experiences love is touch, the sense of touch. So if you think about what you could experience through touch from birth throughout your whole life, that can come in the form of pain, right? So it's so common in people's body talk sessions that one of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle in this return journey to self, or repairing the relationship with love, is that it can go back to birth trauma. And this can come up so many different ways for people, depending on what situation you were born under, where you were born in the world, what was going on with mum and dad and things like that. But one of the most common ones is that very, very soon after birth, injections are given. So if the experience through the subtle sense of touch is painful, that imprints deeply. Deeply, 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 that imprints. And that person, and that's what I'm saying, that's a belief system that can sit there so subconsciously that an individual would not even be aware of, that they have a belief system that sprouted so early in life and then grew from then, that says love is painful. So it does painful love relationships. It expects pain, therefore it gets pain. And from that first experience in life, that all belief systems look to validate themselves, right? So they literally are looking for validation. And then when you perhaps become a child, and if you're born into a parenting situation where teaching and discipline is given out in the form of straps or wooden spoons or getting hit or so forth, that just reinforces that relationship with love through the sense of touch as being painful or being violent or being brutal, or whatever the belief system is that develops around that. So it's not the only, of course, that's not the only belief system that can form, but it's a really good example, and it is one of the biggest reasons why people experience pain around love and manifest painful relationships, physically painful relationships, not to mention emotionally painful, psychologically painful. So from that birthing process, unless you have people, community, bonds and connections around you that show you what the natural consciousness of love really is meant to be like, unless you have healthy bonds and connections and wonderful people around you to help guide you back to self and do some repair work, because there's always going to be repair work that needs to be done there, because it's very likely that mum and dad, or one of them, and then back out through their hereditary lines, ancestral lines, they have trauma there around love. So there's always going to be some type of inquiry and journey that needs to be taken with that to get a repair process that's happening. And that is very much what we're going to be doing in our series of 3 sessions. So what I was going to say to finish it off is there are a couple of key areas of the body-mind complex, and I don't know who's joining me, but if you feel like saying hi and just letting me know who's here, then that would be super wonderful. And if you want to leave a comment as we're going, then you can do that as well. There are some typical areas that we would think, hey, if we're going to be addressing the consciousness of love, it could show up. So we're going to throw these out on the table. They may or may not show up in our sessions. It may or may not be a little bit of an issue for you now. That's part of your own equation around your relationship with love. So we could go here, but we might not go to any of these areas. I mean, our innate wisdoms are going to prioritize whatever the most important thing to do is around this. And it might be some of these things, and it might not be any of them at all. And we might go to completely other areas of the body-mind complex to be able to address this effectively, that traditionally doesn't look like those areas have much to do with love. What I will say is that everything actually has to do with love consciousness. Every single cell that makes you you has to do with love consciousness. Every single energy system, and I don't care what energy system it is, whether it's a nervous system or the meridians or the chakras or the Wei Chi or whatever, or all systems have to do with love consciousness. And then the one of the largest parts of you, the microbiome, huge. Does it have to do with love consciousness? You betcha it does. So we could go anywhere. We could do a whole session just working with the human microbiome, and you'll be thinking like, what the heck? What does this have to do with love consciousness? Heaps, has everything to do with love consciousness. So we'll just see what comes up. Some of the common areas, the heart, big one, big one, the heart. The pericardium that the heart sits in. So that could be the heart as an organ, or it could be the heart meridian, both channels, could be any of the acupuncture points that comes up as a priority. The sac that the heart sits in, the protective component of the heart, which really is a heart protector. The pericardium could come up as a priority, as I just mentioned, physically, but also the pericardium meridian and its corresponding acupuncture points could come up as a priority. In behind the heart is the thymus. Again, the thymus gland very much comes up as being very closely related with the heart. They're kind of like best buddies. And more often than not, the thymus gland comes up in relation to matters of the heart protection, over defensiveness of the heart. Gosh, I had a lot of that when I was younger. I really did. When I came into my first class of body talk, that was my really big aha moment in realizing how defensive I was through the heart and through the chest area, through trauma, a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, violence in my background, but also like just unresolved love relationships and ones that I still wanted to be in and all that kind of stuff. So quite often that thymus, hey Christine, how you going, honey, comes up as being a big piece. There is an area, we could go to any area of the brain, but there's one in particular that keeps popping up for me, and it's the septal region of the brain. Now, this is known as the heart region of the brain, and quite often it's the center where we experience bliss, love, orgasm, those kinds of things. So if you can get a person's body-mind complex where that septal region is really expressing itself well, and where not too left brain heavy dominated, and we haven't got a lot of stress going on, we've resolved trauma, those kinds of things, then that septal region of the brain will be able to coordinate with its other relationships throughout the body and work really well, which means we experience more bliss, more togetherness, more bonding, more kind of just very peace in the moment. And that is all part of love. That is all part of love. There is the heart chakra. There's the entire chakra system, the entire meridian system. The Wei Chi can come up huge around issues around love. The thalamus inside the brain, which is a massive, great big routing station for incoming sensory information, because it's that thalamus that helps to interpret information. Also, the five senses help to interpret information because there's a ton of filters on the five senses, and those filters get put in place through life's experiences. So we can have incoming sensory information, and those filters will be literally dictating the way that the brain is experiencing that sensory information, the world around you. If what the information that's in those filters, if it's really corrupt and really quite triggered and quite shaded with past experiences, then you will not be getting a true reflection of what's going on around you. You won't. It's so heavily filtered, it's not funny. So that is always another thing that our innate wisdoms are working on doing, is removing those filters or lessening the effect of those filters on the five senses, so we can experience the world around us more as it truly is. Now we're barely perceiving probably what is really happening around us and to us. We're barely grasping about 10% of that is what where we're sitting at now in our knowledge, scientifically wise. We're so under functioning in our ability to be able to perceive consciousness, and we have so much filtration happening on our five senses that it's really filtering our view of the world and our intuitive capabilities as well. Which leads me to another aspect that could come up as a priority is intuition, gut instincts, which is more associated with the gut brain or etheric brain. And of course, the functioning and the relationship between the three brains, being the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain, that's enormously important when it comes to our relationship with love. Really, really important. Intuition is very, very important when it comes to love consciousness. So they're just a few areas that could come up as a priority. I dare say any one of the five senses, all the five senses are connected to different areas of the brain, connected to the skin as an organ, the Wei Qi system. Gosh, you could really start going down some pathways, especially when you realize that every single part of the body-mind complex has such strong connections to other areas, and what happens to it has a ripple effect through to other areas, such as the Wei Qi that runs just above our skin and through our skin. It's meant to extend all out through the body. That has a massive relationship between yourself and the world around you, meaning yourself and how you experience love, how you express it, how you bring it into you, all those kinds of things. What's best mates with the Wei Qi? Well, the skin as an organ, touch as a sense, the lungs, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the gallbladder meridian or the gallbladder acupuncture points. So if there's something around the consciousness of love and it's really showing up strongly in the Wei Qi system as an example, the reality that it is also rippled and affected a lot of those other areas that I mentioned is huge. That means that we could be taken on some really interesting journeys throughout this session, and areas that perhaps we hadn't even thought of within the body-mind complex, within our past, within our futures, within our genetics, our past lives, whatever, could come up as a priority. It's really going to be a fun one. And I also think that this consciousness of love is such a profoundly big deal to everybody that I'm going to make it a standard series of sessions that we address every single year in the Academy, no matter what else is going on. And we already do that with money, where we do a month series of sessions with money, because it's such a huge epic part of what we interact with and what we have to deal with. The majority of people have a really unhealthy relationship with the consciousness of money, hence the struggle with it and all the issues around it and why it's just not easy. And that's why we do that. So I'm going to be definitely doing love consciousness every single 12 months. We'll find 1 month in there that just fits right with the consciousness of love. I would love it if you have anything that pops up for you from what we've discussed tonight or today that you want to add in here. And if you've got any questions, pop it into the comments. If there are any other areas of maybe your own body-mind complex that, as we were discussing this, you thought, oh gosh, I felt some movement in that area, or this part kind of came up for me. And regardless of whether it makes sense to you or not, it doesn't have to make sense. Just put it in there if it grabbed you or came up for you and jumped into your awareness, right? And we start our series of sessions next week. And if memory serves me correctly, let me just check. All of our series of sessions for this month are on Thursdays. But I just want to clarify that before we depart one another. Yes, they are. So in June, all of our series of sessions on Thursdays. For July, we won't discuss those series of sessions now, but in July, just so that you can prepare, those 3 sessions will be on Fridays, one after the other, and it's usually that second week of Friday through for the other 3 weeks, just to give you a heads up, okay? Now, if you are coming across this video, yeah, I mistouched so much, I get that. I totally get that, Christine. I get it. And one of the ways, because I'm not in relationship, right? So one of the ways that I bring in touch to my life is making sure that I get it from family if possible, or from friends if possible, not in a needy way, but just making sure you have that touch, you have that connection. One of the other big ways that I very, very deliberately bring it in is through massage. I have a phenomenal massage therapist. I deliberately went out and found a man who specialises in massage and is really good with the structural integrity and knows his physiology of the body super well, but he's also really grounded in who he is as a man, and he has a very good felt sense and an intuitive sense. So I've been seeing him for massages for quite a few years now. And when you're a person that has a lack of sense of touch coming through, whether it's relationship-wise or you don't have a lot of people around you that you can connect with in that way, then you've got to find ways to be able to get that, because it will show up as huge imbalances, massively huge imbalances. So I regularly schedule myself massages. It's not only a way to release a lot of stress and tension for me, and find areas of the body that I need to work on and so forth, but it is really, really great way for me to bring in masculine energy. So I'm not going into that, because I can have a real tendency to go into a strong masculine dominant energy, especially as a business owner and not being in a relationship and being a single parent and that kind of thing. So there are definitely ways that you can counteract that and balance that out until it changes, or you just keep it in play. But I have found particularly massage, because it's so nurturing, to be super great. Yeah. So drop any other comments in that you want to, and happy to start a discussion about anything. And depending on what day of the week you're watching this, I'm recording this on a Friday, so enjoy the rest of your weekend. I know I'm going to. And I'll talk to you guys really soon. Oh, by the way, if you are not a My Incredible Orbit member and you want to check it out further, jump onto my website, JacquieMcIntyre.com, and you can find the MIO page, or My Incredible Orbit page, on there, and it will give you all the information on what we do and how we do it, and options for you to be able to join, because there's 3 really good options with some payment plans on there, and we always welcome in new people to our community. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.